What's up, BookTube? Sandy Golson back here with another tag video, and this one is Reader Problems tag from About to Read. So I saw this and I haven't totally read through this, so hopefully I haven't bitten off more than I can chew as I jump into this. So stick with me here. All right, so here we go. Question number 1 of 11. Question number 1. You have 20,000 books on your TBR. How in the world do you decide what to read next? So, basically what I do is I look at what I'm interested in right now, and I'm usually kind of trendy in the kind of things that I'm reading. And so if I'm reading a certain type of book, so say I'm really interested in books dark academia books that take place on, college campuses or on boarding school campuses, then I'll look for books that fit that. Or say if I'm looking for books that are maybe more in a horror genre, then I'll maybe break it down a little bit more like that. If I want to go in a direction where I'm really in a nice groove reading nonfiction books, biographies, then I'll just kind of break it down that way. So I just use like different categories depending on what I've been interested in, or maybe it's authors that I've been interested in, then I'll stick with them for a while. And so that's kind of the way I whittle it down. So I've never had to whittle down from 20,000 books, of course, but I do have quite a few books, not the least of which are the ones that you can see behind me. Okay. Question number 2, you're halfway through a book and you're just not loving it. Do you quit or are you committed? Well, history says that I am committed because I very rarely DNF a book. I've only DNF'd probably in the last year. I think I've only DNF'd one book, and that was a book that I was really invested in trying to give it a chance, but it just wasn't clicking for me, and I stepped away from it for a little while, and then I came back to it and I still just wasn't feeling it, so I ended up DNFing it. Question number 3. The end of the year is coming and you're so close but so far away on your Goodreads reading challenge. Do you try to catch up, and how? That is not a problem. This year I'm well past my Goodreads reading challenge goal, which was 50. I've more than blown that away. I will say that I think a couple years ago I was maybe on the verge of either making it really close or maybe coming up just a tad short. And so I ended up reading a lot of shorter books, which actually is really good because I do enjoy those kinds of books anyway. So the truth is I would probably go for trying to catch up, and part of that is just because I'm just competitive. It's just kind of the way I grew up. That's just kind of the way I am. So I'm just competitive and I just don't like to lose. Okay, question 4. The covers of a series you love do not match. How do you cope? I don't really read a lot of series, so I don't really think that would be a big issue because, number 1, I don't read a lot of series, and number 2, I don't really focus too much on the cover. I might appreciate that the cover looks really good, but I don't necessarily, as the old saying goes, judge a book by the cover. It's just not really my thing. Okay, 5. Everyone and their mother loves a book you really don't like. Who do you bond with over shared feelings? I don't know. I guess if everybody loves a book that I don't really like, I don't know that I necessarily need to bond with anybody. I guess it's just if everybody else likes it and I don't, then I guess I just have to move on to something else. But I do tend to look around sometimes if there's a book that I'm either really feeling, to see what other people are thinking, or other people feeling it or not feeling it. There was a book, I think a lot of people seem to really like Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo, and I thought it was well written, but I just wasn't really getting into it. I did finish it, and it was good. It was a solid read. I wasn't quite as excited about it as everybody else was, but it was good. I don't regret reading it, but again, everybody else liked it a lot more than I did. Number 6, you're reading a book and you are about to start crying in public. How do you deal? Well, that's just not going to happen. It's just not that kind of party for me. So let's move on. Number 7, a sequel of a book you love just came out, but you've forgotten a lot from the prior novel. Will you reread the book, skip the sequel, try to find a synopsis on Goodreads, cry in frustration? Let's see, there you go with the crying thing again. That's just not going to happen. I would say if there was a sequel that came out, I think probably the closest realistic example I have of that is when the Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes came out for the Hunger Games series. It had been a while since I read Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay, but I felt comfortable enough that I remembered enough of what happened. But I guess if I was in a situation where I was reading a sequel and I really didn't remember enough and I felt like I needed to know more because it was maybe progressive, then I would probably go back and read some reviews, and usually that'll jog my memory if there's a book that I'm trying to remember that I read a long time ago. Usually just reading some reviews that people had, some things that'll just trigger memories that'll come back. So that's probably the approach that I would take. Let's see. 8, you do not want anyone borrowing your books. How do you politely tell people nope when they ask? Well, one strategy is just to make sure that they do not know that you have it. Another strategy, of course, is to be a hermit and not let anybody in your life. Those are certainly options. The most realistic option is that if they want to borrow a book that you just are not really willing to loan, just straight up tell them, like, hey man, this is a book that's special to me for whatever reason. There's only one book I probably have that's like that. It's One-on-One by Tabitha King, and the only reason I would hesitate to let anybody borrow it is because at least the one copy of it has a lot of tabs in it that aren't really tabs. They're just kind of like little pieces of paper that are stuck in there, and I don't want to lose those spots. So I would probably not let anybody borrow that one. But I do have another copy of it, which I probably would let somebody borrow. Let's see. Number 9, reading ad. You've picked up and put down 5 books in the last month. How do you get over your reading slump? I would say the biggest way for me to get over a reading slump, there's probably 2 things that I would do. One is I would do some writing. So writing helps me, creative writing helps me to kind of recalibrate, so to speak. And the other thing is if I'm having trouble reading, I'll try reading short stories. Those are something that usually help me kind of get back into the groove. So when I get into a reading slump, which is pretty rare, but when I get into a reading slump, it's usually some long novels that I probably struggle to get through. And so usually one of the remedies is just to read a short story from start to finish, feel pretty good about your confidence level, get your confidence back up, and then you can start to work at attacking. You look at books that you're interested in, and then you start to attack those books, maybe progressively getting to the point where you're reading longer books. So, but you know, everybody's got a different reason why they might be in a reading slump, and you just have to know yourself well to know how to get yourself out of it, or at least how to come up with strategies to get yourself out of it. Let's see, number 10. There are so many new books coming out that you're dying to read. How many do you actually buy? I'm actually, I'm not in a buying ban right now, but I would say when there's a lot of new books coming out that I'm really interested in, I just prioritize which ones do I really want to read. Is there an author that I trust? You know, because I've had a history of success with this author, and they are either an auto buy or they're pretty close to an auto buy. So if that's the case, I'll look at those first. If it's a story that's really interesting to me, really sounds interesting to me, and I just can't resist it, I'll look at that first. But I wouldn't necessarily, just because I see a whole bunch of books that I might be interested in, you know, you got to watch your budget too. So you got to be a little bit careful with that. Sometimes you might look for good buys. There might be places you can go and you can find books on the cheap, but mainly I just will prioritize and just knock them out one at a time based on my comfort level with the story, my familiarity perhaps with the author, and just what I generally thinking I'm gonna like. And It could be also a matter of the books that I've been reading of late. They might really ease me more into one book as opposed to a different book. And lastly, number 11. Number 11, after you've bought the new books you can't wait to get to, how long do they sit on your shelf before you get to them? Well, to be honest, sometimes they might sit for a while. I've got a few books right now that are kind of whispering in my ear behind me that, hey, what about us? So they can sit for a while. It just depends, I'm also in Book of the Month, and so you can sort of see behind me, I've got some Book of the Month books that I need to catch up on. There's also some behind the camera that you cannot see that I need to catch up on. So they could sometimes honestly sit there for a while. So just got to keep it 100 with that. So anyway, that is the reader problems tag for you. And hopefully you had a good time, and hopefully you thought about maybe how you might answer some of these questions in your own version of this tag. So keep that in mind, and if you'd like to jump into it, go ahead and just smash it. Take it out. Have fun with it. So if you like this video, please hit the like button for this video. And if you're interested in BookTube or AuthorTube content, please consider hitting the subscribe button for future videos on this channel.